Hi there, this is Transfer Talk. 2 weeks to go and Manchester City are making moves. 3 potential signings this week, and it looks like they may also add a midfielder to their ranks. We will tell you who that could be shortly. Also this hour, is a deal for Marcus Rashford to leave Manchester United in doubt. We've got the latest on him and a new left-back who could be coming into Old Trafford. Arsenal need a new striker. Could Victor Osimhen or Benjamin Šeško solve their problems? And despite signing for Chelsea in the summer, could João Felix be on his way out of Stamford Bridge? Very good afternoon to you all at home. Once again, Flex is here, Kweku Afari's here, Molly Stevens is here. They were here this morning. And in the afternoon on a Monday, we just beef out the midfield a little bit. A bit of continental flair from Kevin Hatchard, European football. You're like our Rodri, mate. You just break play up and you're vital. Start things off again.
As in that physical edge.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Speaking of Rodri, we're going to talk about someone who potentially could be a replacement for him in some ways for Manchester City. We've picked out 4 names to start off with, 4 players, 4 big names. Here they are, whose futures are uncertain at the moment. Douglas Luiz, Marcus Rashford, Kyle Walker and Omar Marmoush. Let's start with Marcus Rashford then, shall we? Because we're hearing now that it's possible that he might not leave Manchester United. It's looking increasingly unlikely that he would leave Manchester United, apparently. There's still a chance, obviously, because Dortmund are in with him. AC Milan are still lurking. But he may not leave. He may stay with United this window. Is this to do with the fact, largely, to do with his wages and how much people are willing to pay?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Because clubs, even big clubs like Milan or Dortmund, would find it difficult to cover all of his wages. So there'd have to be an element of compromise there. If you look at Dortmund as well, there's so much uncertainty there at the moment. I commentated on their game on Friday. When they went to Frankfurt, it was another poor display. They were beaten again. They're way off the pace in terms of the title, but also off the pace in terms of Champions League spots and maybe even European spots. So it means the coach, Nuri Sahin, is under massive pressure. So you've got a situation where, OK, you might bring Marcus Rashford in, but he might have a totally new coach to work with, but not entirely new, because what if it's Erik ten Hag? So...
what if it is Erik ten Hag? I mean, how does that affect...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they've had clashes in the past, but he played him a lot of times. You know, they have worked together a lot. He knows the quality that he can bring. But as we've said before, Rashford to Dortmund brings a doubt as well over Jamie Gittins, because he's probably been their best player this season. Where does he play? Off the left. So that adds another layer of curiosity to it as well.
OK, I mean, I should say we are hearing that it is becoming increasingly difficult if United are to move Marcus Rashford on this January, rather than becoming increasingly unlikely. To Douglas Luiz, then, and this is an interesting one because he is among the names that Manchester City are considering in terms of midfield targets. He's a former player of Manchester City, of course, as well, so it would be a return. This is interesting, isn't it? Because they are about to sign, we think, an attacking player and 2 centre-backs this week. But a lot of people would say, well, actually, with Rodri out, it's the midfield that could be a priority, and he could well be the man to fill that spot.
Yeah, if Manchester City managed to get Douglas Luiz as well during this transfer window, and on top of the 3 that are all but signed, it would be an amazing window for them. Douglas Luiz is a really good player, a very, very good player. And you haven't got to rewind the clocks back that far, obviously only to the last season, to just know how good of a player he is for Aston Villa. Aston Villa fans will tell you one of their highest performers, if not the. Fantastic in midfield. There was a sort of a bit earlier on in his career at Aston Villa. Is he a 6? Is he an 8? Is he where does he really fit? But Unai Emery really sorted that out, and we knew exactly what Douglas Luiz is, contributing with goals, contributing with assists, contributing with winning duels, winning the ball back, very combative, can cover space. A fantastic footballer, and actually it was really surprising to see him go to Juve, and maybe Kev can enlighten us just why it hasn't quite worked out there, but really, really surprising nonetheless. And, you know, I think if he was to come back to the Premier League, there'd be a whole host of Premier League teams who could do with somebody like Douglas. We've seen Arsenal, you know, have bids either rejected reportedly or been interested in him. I know my team could definitely do with Douglas Luiz, a fantastic player. So for Manchester City, though, you're looking at that Rodri replacement. Of course, he's not as good on the ball as Rodri, who is. Of course, he doesn't have the same impact as Rodri. But in terms of somebody who's a tangible player in there who could have an impact away from Matheus Nunes, away from Kovacic, who those players haven't really managed to lock that down. Calvin Phillips' era has passed. I think David Luiz would be a fantastic signing.
Villa didn't want to let him go.
No.
It was down to PSR, really. I think if PSR hadn't been there, that's not a deal that they would have pursued. But they did quite a lot of business with Juve in the end because a couple of players went the other way and were then loaned out. So it's a really interesting situation. It hasn't quite happened at Juve.
What's happened there, Kev? Just out of favour? Didn't get on with the manager?
Well, I think there are other
enough?
options. So Kefren Thuram's come in and done very well. Locatelli's a very experienced player, and Thiago Motta has a very specific idea of what he wants from midfielders. It's not like he hasn't played at all, but he hasn't been the main man that maybe people expected for the amount of money that they paid.
Molly, Flex mentioned it there. Shouldn't other Premier League clubs be looking at Douglas Luiz? Because his value also would be significantly less than, say, the 40 million that Arsenal quoted beforehand.
Yeah, and as Flex rightly says, he knows the league so well. He did so well at Aston Villa, so well. You know, getting them into the Champions League spots in fourth was such an achievement. And he can play, of course, that central midfielder and defensive midfielder role. He would be such an asset. My only concern is obviously the risk around his time at Juventus, only featuring 16 times this season, isn't quite enough. That said, we know what he's got in him from his time at Aston Villa previously. He scored 9 goals in 35 Premier League appearances for Aston Villa last season. There's no doubt that he could replicate that form. And can you imagine, the players he'd be playing around? And again, just to be back in the Premier League, I think we could see him really thrive at a number of clubs.
Yeah, he's a player that is, of course, very, very talented. A lot of those goals for Aston Villa did come from the penalty spot.
Yes.
He's very deadly from set pieces, not just from the spot, but also taking corners. He's a multifaceted player, and he also knows the club, right? He schooled there, he come through their academy. Obviously didn't make any first-team appearances for Manchester City, but he's a very, very talented player. And I want to ask you, though, Kev, we're seeing the migration, or the potential migration of players from the Premier League to Serie A. Why is it that a player like him didn't work? He's got the physicality. I know that it's under a different manager. Thiago Motta's maybe got a different style of football. You said Thuram came in. But you would think that the attributes that he displays, the attributes that he brings to the table, he'd be a dead cert to be a monster in a league like Serie A, where physicality is favoured, and players that have gone from the Premier League to Serie A have normally thrived.
Yeah, like I say, I think it's just other players have... Thuram's got in there and done very well. Locatelli is a really reliable guy in that system. And Thiago Motta came in from Bologna, had very specific ideas. They wanted to bring in Koopmeiners, who's a very different player, a bit further forward, but still in that central midfield area. So he's just been the odd man out. Like I say, it's not that he hasn't played at all, but when you're under that pressure that every time you play, you're thinking, I've got to perform, that's going to affect you a little bit anyway. And any player that moves countries, moves leagues, moves clubs, can take a little while to settle.
Right, guys, we've got to move it on. We've got 2 more people to talk about at the top of this show. Omar Marmoush, let's get on to him. Obviously, this one seems a lot closer, doesn't it? You commentated on the game on Friday, wasn't it? Yeah, Eintracht Frankfurt beating Borussia Dortmund. Big win for them as they look to stay in the Champions League race and up near the top of the table. Marmoush could be one of 3 signings for City this week. Did it feel very much like that was a farewell for him, the way that he came out at the end, waved to the fans?
Oh, 100%. Well, he was left out of the squad, and the club put out, we are in negotiations with a foreign club, which is Manchester City. So he didn't play. But after the win, he came out, and when a German club wins, generally they line up in front of the fans, in front of the ultras. And he came out and was pushed forward by his teammates and stood in front of them and took the applause. And he was quite teary. I mean, it was quite an emotional moment. I think what has been really interesting is his professionalism in the last few weeks, because this has been a move that's been in the pipeline for a while. The thing that has swung it, I think, is City were prepared to pay what Frankfurt wanted. Frankfurt didn't expect that. Frankfurt thought, right.
They normally play hardball, don't they, Frankfurt? And they always get what they want for a player.
Well, they kind of have, in the sense that they thought, right, we want, 70, 80, however that works in terms of million euro. And I think they genuinely believed we can get to the end of the season. Nobody's going to want to pay that yet. And then we can negotiate in the summer about a move. And City seem to have come in and said, we want him, we'll pay this. And that's what's changed it. Their urgency to bring him in. He is somebody that has lit up the Bundesliga, goals, assists. He's not a true 9. He's not a competitor for Haaland. He's somebody that could fill in there if you need. But he plays second striker really well, floats around, scores goals, makes goals, strikes the ball beautifully, takes set pieces, but can play wide as well. So he's the kind of Swiss Army knife of a footballer that I think Pep Guardiola would love to work with.
I think when that deal gets done, I think we can say that probably is the signing of the window so far, a really exciting one as well. How about outgoings at City? We're hearing that interest in Marcus Rashford has been cooling as far as AC Milan are concerned. How would that affect the future of Kyle Walker, do you think?
So I think Walker's sudden availability, if that is indeed the case, has changed this, because Milan know they can't sign both because of Brexit. The rules have changed. They cannot sign 2 English players in this window. So therefore, they're more interested in Walker than they are in Rashford. And that makes sense, because he can cover that right-back slot, he can cover centre-back. There's talk of Emerson Royale, who's been a bit hit and miss. Spurs fans might not be surprised about that. It's been a bit hit and miss. Moving to Galatasaray, maybe, and that would open up space for Walker. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who's very much involved in the hierarchy at Milan, he's been quite open about the fact they really like Walker as a player, as a leader. He's somebody they could bring in.
OK, right. So that's the update on those 4 big players that could be on the move. How about Manchester United? Because they're looking at a number of left-backs / left wing-backs in this window. It's understood Lecce's Patrick Dorgu is one of those players. However, there's been no formal offer yet. It's understood that Lecce want between 25 and 29 million pounds. What can you tell us about Patrick Dorgu and how he might fit into the way that Manchester United want to play under Amorim?
So he's only 20, but he's crammed a lot in. He came through Nordsjælland in Denmark, and they're renowned as being developers and spotters of young talent. So he went to Lecce, came through the youth ranks there, and started as a left-back. Very dynamic, very athletic, gets up and down that flank really, really well, attack-minded. And then there was a change of coach at Lecce, and the new coach changed him to being a right winger, and actually had him going up and down that flank and coming in off the right to get involved in scoring goals, making goals. So I can understand why he's a player they're looking at. I think they would use him as a left wing-back in Amorim's system. I think that would be the idea. He was linked with Liverpool fairly recently as well, and I think he's a player that it might take a bit of time, but he has the athleticism and the physical gifts that I think United are looking for, because you have to have that as a prerequisite, really, to compete in the Premier League, but also to work in Amorim's system.
I can tell you, Flex has already been getting very excited. He's been avidly studying video of him.
We've been calm.
I saw you. I saw you.
Just had a little look.
He's been watching a lot of him already.
We remain calm.
He was getting excited. But when you think of what this Ruben Amorim team needs going forward, if they want to play the football that he wants to show, is left wing back? Would you say that was a number 1 priority? Is it anything else?
Absolutely. Of course, Manchester United need a vast amount of positions to be filled with the specific profile that Ruben Amorim wants, which is going to take time. But I don't think there'll be too many Manchester United fans who would be disappointed to see them start at left wing-back. Absolutely. I think Ahmad has showed great versatility at being able to play right wing-back. We probably want him closer towards the goal as a right 10, and then Mazraoui has come in there and isn't a natural fit. But Diogo Dalot in particular at left wing-back has struggled with that transition. He's an out-and-out right back, but is capable to fill in at left back. But at left wing back, he's just really, really struggling. And as Kev mentioned there about some of the attributes that Dorgu possesses in terms of that athleticism and that physicality, and he's at, 6'1", it's very important to have somebody who's got a big engine who can do both facets of the game at a high intensity. Manchester United do not have enough players who can play at high intensity for the duration of games. So I think it's a good place to start. But again, at 20 years of age, like Kev said, it's going to take time. But Manchester United need to be shopping around for those types of players with potential. They're not in a position to be bringing in world-class stars right now. Manchester United are 13th in the Premier League. So definitely the type of profile, and I think one that Manchester United fans could look at and say, OK, I can see why they're going after that player, but can't get too excited, Matt. Yeah. Got to relax.
OK, calm. A bit of other news for you regarding Manchester United, because they may actually need to sell before they can spend significant money. And the Napoli sporting director, Giovanni Manna, has confirmed his interest in Alejandro Garnacho. He has described him as an important player. Very interesting comments indeed. We should just say that we are just hearing that Garnacho himself has not actively been looking to leave the club, but he is obviously someone who appeals to Mr. Manna. Can we see this developing into a firm bid?
I think the key could be that he appeals to Mr. Conte, I think is the key, because he's somebody that obviously knows him from when he's been in the Premier League, knows what he could bring to Napoli. And Napoli are in a really interesting place right now because they won away at Atalanta at the weekend. They're 3 points clear at the top of Serie A. They played a game more than Inter. But this is where they're looking to maybe bring in one or two players to take them over the top and give them that opportunity to really push. So, Kvaratskhelia has gone. He's gone to Paris Saint-Germain. They've suddenly got a big wedge burning a hole in their pocket. So it's a deal I think they could do. Scott McTominay has made that move very, very successfully. Scored a goal in that win at Atalanta. He's been magnificent. I imagine he'd have positive things to say to Garnacho about a potential move to Naples.
OK, well, we'll keep an eye on that one. That is for sure. Just a couple of other lines regarding Manchester United, and they will consider loan offers for Tyrell Malacia in this window. And Real Betis are close to agreeing a deal to sign the winger Antony on loan. We've got loads more on the way. Arsenal, of course, they are in need of a striker, but do their title hopes rely on them signing one? We'll look at a couple of options after this. pretty short and hinted that the club must act in the January transfer window. Let's hear what he had to say after the draw with Aston Villa.
Tomorrow we'll have more information. Tomorrow they will have another test on him, and I will be more clear about that.
Are you worried about it? Or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially with the numbers that we have in the squad and looking at our bench, very worried. When you look at the performances, I don't know how many teams they're playing at this level in the league. But when you look at the bench, probably you say, I think we are very short.
Well, Kevin, us Arsenal fans, we wanted a striker for a while, a big-name striker. I know it's hard in January to get the kind of striker that you want, but let's go through a couple names again here, because the name of Victor Osimhen has come up again in the Evening Standard, who said that Arsenal may potentially go in for him. Benjamin Šeško they wanted in the summer, but he's still at RB Leipzig. This January, are either of those two players a possibility for Arsenal?
I think they're difficult deals to do. They're not impossible, but they're difficult to do. If you take the Osimhen one first, he's on loan from Napoli to Galatasaray. Galatasaray have been on a charm offensive with him all the way through. He's really enjoying his time there. He's scoring goals. He's in the mix to win a title. He's in Europe. So at the moment, he's happy where he is. So you'd have to convince him that that was a move he wanted to make. That's not a dig at Arsenal. It's just, you know, he's happy where he is. Galatasaray are trying to make the finances happen in the summer, even though it's an incredibly difficult deal to do. But nobody thought they could sign Mauro Icardi permanently when they did. So they've pulled rabbits out of the hat before. Šeško is difficult as well because Leipzig really need to keep him, because they're not guaranteed to qualify for the Champions League. They're still in the DFB Pokal, which is the German Cup. So he is a key player for them they would not want to allow to go. If you look at their history, they very rarely do deals in January anyway in terms of outgoings. And in terms of big-name players to go in January, that pretty much never happens. The suggestion is there is an agreement between them, between Šeško and Leipzig, that he can go in the summer for a big chunk of money, but a club like Arsenal would be able to pay that, I think, but in the summer.
Quaker, Arsenal have got a bit of a dilemma here, haven't they, really? Because, say, for example, you can't get your top three choices in January. Say, Alexander Isak, I don't know, Šeško and Gyökeres. I'm not saying those are Arsenal's three top choices, but say that they are and you can't get them. Is it then worth going out and spending 70 million on your fourth choice and means you can't then go again in the summer, or are you better off just holding on to your money, getting in a short-term loan, and then going all in for, say, Alexander Isak in the summer?
Yeah, I think the latter option, because if you look at Arteta historically, with Arsenal in title races, the players that he's targeted in January haven't necessarily been the big splashes. The biggest splash he's made since being Arsenal manager, Declan Rice, that was a summer move, and that was well documented how long the courting went on in that process. A couple of years ago, Leandro Trossard, on this day, actually 2 years ago, Leandro Trossard signed for Arsenal. Jorginho in the same transfer window as well. They're not big splashes, they were just supplementary pieces for the squad. It's difficult to get business done in January. And there's an argument to be made that you want to see Arteta coach his way out of the situation. Not every team gets their top target. If you think about the discourse in the summer about Liverpool, how they needed the number 6, how the number 6 was imperative. They don't get one, they're not going to challenge. And they're top of the league, making do with what they've got in their squad currently. I understand that Arsenal are way behind in terms of goals scored per game than they were last year. They've only scored 43 league goals in 22 games. That's the fourth highest in the division. But there are options in the squad in terms of goal scoring options. I know that Kai Havertz is much derided at the moment for some high-profile misses and incidents in games, but he's a player that has scored goals for Arsenal. And so if you can't go and get your number one target, then there is a risk that you could restrict yourself in terms of PSR if you go and spend big money on a player that isn't necessarily the best fit for your squad. So there's an argument to be made that if there's not a clear option for Arsenal in this window, you're best off just staying put and then going again big in the summer, because let's be honest, we all think that Liverpool are clear title favourites. Arsenal have to do a lot to overcome Liverpool, and to make a rash move in January might hamper Arsenal in the long run.
But the problem is, Molly, is I don't think the fans would be particularly happy. If no move was made, the fans would almost think, well, OK, it looks like you're saying that we're not going to win the title this year. You're almost sacrificing this season for next. And it's very early in the season, really, to do that in January.
I couldn't agree more with you. If I was an Arsenal fan and it got to February the 3rd and a forward hadn't come in, I'd be extremely disappointed, because Like you say, yes, they did drop significant points against Villa on the weekend, but they're still in the title race. They're still within a shout of the title if reinforcements are made. League Cup, they're still in with a shout of. Champions League, obviously they're still in the Champions League too. So I think there's plenty to fight for. And as we mentioned earlier with Southampton, I think, Mikel Arteta and Arsenal have got to show that ambition to want to get the right striker in the summer. But for now, they need a stopgap. They need a loan deal just to buy their time for the next couple of months, just to challenge for that title and keep that confidence there within Arsenal Football Club. If they get to February the 3rd without a forward, I would be amazed. After all these, how many windows have we spoken about? Needing a striker for Arsenal.
Too many. Hasn't gone away.
How many times can we be here?
Historically, though, how many times have we seen a team that is chasing the title, that goes on to win the title, make those decisive moves in January? That business is normally done in the summer.
Yeah.
January is just to bring in pieces that can reinforce the squad if injuries do happen. Injuries have happened at Arsenal. Saka's out for a significant amount of time. Gabriel Jesus is also out of an injury. But to go and make that statement signing in January, it very rarely works out. I know Aubameyang was one of the high-profile signings they did bring in January, but that obvious option is not there. And the top strikers in the world are they've either signed new contracts or happy where they are. And so for Arsenal to go out and splash money on a player that might not necessarily fit Arteta's system, I think it will hamper them.
That's exactly it, isn't it? They can't get a statement signing now. It has to be a loan deal. Who is the million-dollar question? I know we spoke about Evan Ferguson earlier, the 20-year-old. It could be a heck of a move for him, a really big ask to be able to walk into a
an issue with that,
starting
with the number of
side.
domestic loans
Yes.
already used up. So that the only way for that to happen would be if someone else came back on loan or something like that. But yeah, I mean, look, there's still plenty of time, isn't there? What have we got? 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
See, that's what I say, Matt, keep calm, see?
Very calm.
You're keeping calm?
Very calm.
Good man.
Very calm. I won't be on deadline day. The problems continue to mount for Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou. Another defeat and yet more injuries to contend with. Dominic Solanke missed the defeat to Everton. Let's hear from Postecoglou, who after the game had this to say on potential signings.
I have no issue with the way the club's going about it. They're working hard and trying to find solutions for us. These players need help for sure. Hopefully over the next sort of 10 days we find a solution for it.
Are you confident you will get those solutions then in the next week or so?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's like I said, it's really tricky. We're not the only ones, in the market for players, but like I said, the club's working hard to try and find a solution for it.
Well, we are hearing that Spurs' number one priority in the window, Flex, is still a forwards, but they have conceded 35 goals. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me that they've conceded 35 goals, considering...
No, but that they're targeting a forward.
Right, that I was going to say, because in terms of the players that they've had missing in that area and they've had to really switch things around, it creates more instability. But absolutely, I do see what you're saying in terms of, is it surprising that they're still targeting the forward when you're shipping so much goals? I just think the counter to that is Ange Postecoglou would argue that he has Van der Ven back soon. He's having Romero back soon. Udogie, a little bit longer, but Jed Spencer's doing a really good job. And again, similar to what Quaker said, if you go and spend heavily in that area now, how much does it disrupt what your starting 11 is? But then you look at Dragusin, who's been brought in for times like this. He's struggled. I don't think he necessarily fits exactly how Ange Postecoglou wants to play. So you're looking at the recruitment there and they're saying they've brought in a signing for 25 odd million quid. It hasn't really worked out. Archie Gray's had to play there. So they do need a centre-back, I believe. They do need a defender. They need a central midfielder as well. They've been needing a six for a fair amount of time. They still haven't fixed that position. Someone like Douglas Luiz actually would be amazing for Spurs as well. And at the top end of the pitch, of course, they already had a lot of strain on the likes of Dominic Solanke, Brennan Johnson and Kulusevski, etc. Son is not at the level that he usually is. It's a difficult moment. So really, in all three key positions, in attack, midfield and defence, they could do with reinforcements. And time is running out. And if Ange Postecoglou doesn't get results quick enough, his job's on the line as well. So a really difficult position for Spurs, whether they keep investing into Ange Postecoglou when it hasn't gone quite right, but do you give him the benefit of the doubt with how many injuries they've had? They've got some young, promising players coming through. You look at likes of Mikey Moore, you look at Bergvall, You look at Jed Spence, you look at Archie Gray, there's real promise for the future there. So there is a good nucleus there, but right now they need results, and they do need signings in all three of those positions.
And they need Solanke, hopefully, to not be too major an injury. Now, coming up on Transfer Talk, Kevin is going to talk us through 6 European stars' futures, including Alphonso Davies. Stay with Welcome back to Transfer Talk. We're going to delve into Kevin Hatchard's brain right now. He's picked out 6 players to discuss, 6 big players actually from Europe and potentially ones who could be in the Premier League. You never know. Let's start with Alphonso Davies, big player for Bayern Munich. Contract issues, out of contract. What's going on with him?
So he's out of contract in the summer, as you say. He's been revitalised under Vincent Kompany this season, playing really well for Bayern. They're 4 points clear at the top at the moment. The narrative for a lot of the season has been Real Madrid very, very keen on him, would love to bring him to the Spanish capital. But there has been more positive talk in the last few days that Bayern and Davies' camp have actually managed to find a figure that works. And they are confident that by the end of this month, they will have an agreement on a long-term deal, maybe that goes on to 2029. That'd be a massive boost, I think, for Davies, actually, because I think deep down, he knows that Bayern have been great for him. He knows he's achieved things. He's won the Champions League. He's won league titles galore. You can understand why he would maybe want a new challenge, but I think him and Bayern work well, and under Kompany, he's taken a real step.
Okay, Real Madrid would not be happy with that if that was the case. They've got sort of Mbappe situation, wouldn't it be almost?
Well, the briefing's been really interesting because they're saying, well, that if you look at Marca and AS and publications like that, Madrid have done everything they can. Now it's up to the player.
Right.
When that kind of line comes out, usually it's not going their way.
Right, putting it all on him. I tell you what, if this guy became available, he would be one of the most sought-after players on the planet. Jamal Musiala, what's going on with his contract?
So his situation's not as immediate. He's got another year, but Bayern very, very keen to tie him down to a long-term deal. He's spoken quite positively about staying at Bayern. They see him as the face of Bayern going forward, one of the most exciting players in Europe. The sticking point at the moment is believed to be whether there'll be a release clause and how big that release clause would be. Bayern generally don't like to put that kind of thing in there, but for him, they might have to make an exception.
Yeah, absolutely. How about Randall Colomouani? Now, we were hearing that this move from PSG to Juventus was all sorted. What's holding it up?
So what's holding it up is that Paris have already got the maximum number of loans. So 6, they're not allowed any more. So therefore, Colomouani can't join Juventus on loan until they either, they sell one of those players or they cancel one of the loans.
Was this not known before they did the deal?
Well, Italian media are saying that Cristiano Giuntoli, who's the sporting director at Juve, is furious about this. He's like, well, what's going on? So Cher Dur, who's a young player who's been loaned out to Besiktas, in French media, they're saying they'll convert that to a sale to an Italian club, and that will sort it out. But Colomouani's been pictured at Juventus actually training already, so he fully expects the move to go through, but there's a few more hoops to jump through yet.
OK, how about a player who could have a bit of Premier League interest, actually, in Karim Adeyemi from Borussia Dortmund? Who's interested in him?
So Chelsea have been linked with him. They get linked with so many good young players. Adeyemi has the raw ability, has the talent. What we haven't seen is the consistency. He's been really unlucky with injuries, but if you look at his time at Dortmund, coaches have said publicly, if he could only find that consistency, he can go to the next level. So at the moment, he'd be a risk, I think. Dortmund wouldn't want to let him go, but given how in and out he's been of the team, if a good offer came in, I think it's something that at least countenance.
Yeah. All right. Milan Skriniar, top international defender. Could we see him in the Premier League?
We could do, but the loan thing has changed his situation as well because he's hugely experienced, but he's not an automatic first choice for Luis Enrique at Paris Saint-Germain. So I think it would have to be a permanent move if he was to move in this window. But given his experience, given his physicality, he could be a bargain for somebody in this window.
Let's finish off with maybe a bit of positive news for bottom club Southampton. You know, if they do want to stay in the league, you would think they're going to have to be active this January. There is some interest in Albert Grombach from Rennes. What can you tell us about him?
So he's a player that when he was at Bodø Glimt in Norway, he was excellent, scoring lots of goals, making lots of goals, playing as a 10 or an attacking midfielder. And that's what prompted Rennes to bring him in. He was seen as somebody that had done well in European football because Bodø Glimt had been one of the big surprise stories of the last few years. But it hasn't really happened for him at Rennes. There's been instability in terms of the coaching position. Jorge Sampaoli's gone in there now. And Sampaoli has said, look, he doesn't want to stay here. He wants to pursue a move. He's been kind of edged out. So there might be an opportunity to restart his career. He's only in his early 20s, still 23. I think he's still got a lot to give. But going into Southampton, of course, is difficult because of the situation they're in. But I can understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah. All right. Great stuff, as ever, Kevin Hatchard. Now, stay with us, because coming up, we're going to talk about João Felix. Is he set to leave Chelsea, and will West Ham sign Andre Silva? Welcome back to Transfer Talk. AC Milan want to sign João Felix. Chelsea consider the player unavailable for sale, but concede that every player has a price. Felix only rejoined Chelsea in the summer from Atletico Madrid. Only one person to start with on this, and that is you, Kweku. We spoke quite a lot about Mr. Felix, didn't we, in the last window? It seems like every window someone either wants to sell him or buy him, or both. He's not starting regularly at the moment, certainly not as regularly as he would like to, I'm sure, since he moved back. Chelsea say that he's not for sale, but if they needed to get some money in before they bought anyone, would he not be one of the players that still retains quite a high value?
Personally, the purchase of João Felix in the summer didn't really make too much sense to me as a Chelsea fan. If you look at what Nkunku brings to the table, you look at Cole Palmer and how prominent he was for Chelsea last season and how good of a player he is, they occupy similar places on the pitch to João Felix, who's incredibly talented. There's a reason why he garnered such a hefty fee, or garnered hefty fees throughout his career. But he's a player that Maresca's asked a lot about João Felix, and he talks quite a lot about him. He sees him as another number 10, as a dual 10 to play alongside Cole Palmer, but that hasn't really materialised as a result of how Chelsea are set up in their midfield. And so João Felix has been restricted to cameo appearances off the bench, playing in cup competitions, and he's a player that a lot of teams in the Premier League could use, a lot of teams across Europe could use. He's very, very talented. I was talking to Flex during the break. He's somebody at Manchester United is one of those 10s in behind the striker. He could play in that position. So there's no wonder why teams are interested in his services. From Chelsea's point of view, if you do need to recoup some fees for players, he's definitely one of those options because his long-term future at Chelsea, to me, doesn't look like a starter.
Just on that, Kev, AC Milan seem to be making quite a lot of moves in this window, particularly for Premier League players. Well, why have they been so active?
Yeah, I mean, they've had big changes at the top. Jerry Cardinale, the owner, has taken on a bit more responsibilities, a real drive to kind of, I think, revamp the squad for Sergio Conceição, who they brought in to replace Paulo Fonseca. I think there was a bit of embarrassment about how badly that went in the end. And I think they look at Inter miles ahead of them. They look at Juventus making moves. They look at Atalanta, who, you know, under Gasperini have worked miracles in the last few years, and they're thinking we're getting left behind a bit here. So I think they are trying to be more imaginative. They are trying to put more money into it. The João Felix thing is really interesting to me because I think he's brilliant as a footballer. I think he's a wonderful player to watch. But, I mean, world's tiniest violin. But he's been in a kind of modern football cage from the moment Atletico paid that fee for him. Because he won La Liga with Atletico. He had some good times there. It wasn't all bad. But once you fall out with Simeone, that's the end of that. And so he's had weird moves since then. Other clubs that couldn't permanently take him, like Barcelona. They would have loved to have, but they couldn't afford to do it. Then he ends up at Chelsea because Chelsea needs to do a deal. Atletico wanted to do the Gallagher thing. It was all a bit of a mess. Chelsea didn't 100% want him. I think if it was an even playing field, they'd had a free hand completely. It's not a deal they would have necessarily done. And it annoys me in a way because there are so many clubs you could go to that you could be massively effective for.
That really is the world's smallest
Isn't
violin.
it just?
I can't even hear it playing. It's that small. That small. Can't hear anything.
You get a microscope, you can see it.
You can see it, you just can't hear it. Let's move on to West Ham United. They remain interested in RB Leipzig forward Andre Silva, with one source telling us they have made initial inquiries. Leipzig would prefer a permanent deal, or at least a loan that comes with an obligation to buy. West Ham also remain interested in Brighton's Evan Ferguson and Nottingham Forest Tayo Awoniyi and Evan Gerson. I want to bring you in on the two foreign-based players there first of all. So Andre Silva, is the one that we're hearing. One source has told us they're making initial inquiries on him. Is this the kind of signing that would excite West Ham, do you think?
He's a fixer-upper. I think that's clear because you look at, he had a loan spell in Spain that didn't really work last season. He's ended up being the odd man out at Leipzig. He's got Benjamin Šeško, brilliant. Lois Stupendo, who's scored goals ever since he got there. And he's just gone down and down and down the pecking order. And I think he's been a bit unlucky. He's been really professional. He's kept on trying to train hard, trying to convince Marco Rosa that he should be in there. You go back, he's played for some big clubs and he's played a lot for Portugal. So there's a player with pedigree, with quality. but he does need a bit of patience. But I think Graham Potter could work with a player like that because he has that technical quality.
What about Evan Guesson? What would West Ham be getting if they signed him? We're not hearing that any talks have happened or anything like that, but they are interested.
So he's the kind of player I think Tottenham could be linked to as well, actually. I think he would suit them. He's somebody that presses well, somebody that's strong in attack, and he's really taken off this season since Franck Ayres, the former Lens coach, got to Nice. And he's been scoring goals. I think he's got 8 in Ligue 1 this season. He's been making goals as well. And he's got that physicality and a bit of speed as well, not just in attack, but without the ball as well. He does some really good work without the ball. So I can understand why West Ham and a coach like Graham Potter would look at somebody like that and think that would be a big boost.
OK. If we look at West Ham overall, Molly, in the last couple of games, so Graham Potter's come in. The pressing was a lot better, wasn't it, in their win? But they lost to Crystal Palace in the next game. They beat Fulham, lost to Crystal Palace. So 1-1 lost one under Potter, but only 11 shots combined in those 2 games. Is a lot of that down to not having an out-and-out striker, or are there other issues as well?
Yeah, I think, can't focus too much on Graham Potter's time in charge at the moment, given that it is only those 2 games. But even before he came into the club, a striker had to be the priority. They need to score more goals. That is the bottom line. With Jared Bowen out until at least the end of next month, Michail Antonio, we know, is out for the season. Nicholas Füllkrug now picking up that injury too. They need to be much more of a threat on goal if they've got any chance of really moving up that table. And Graham Potter will know that. He'll know that he needs to identify that as the prime position in which they need to strengthen this window. OK, we're going to finish with this because Dele is back. He has signed for Como in Serie A on an 18-month deal after a successful trial. His contract at Everton ended in the summer, so he was a free agent. Good to see him back, isn't it? Flex, Dele, we all wish him well. Do you think a place like Como, slightly out of the spotlight, lower expectation, but still in a big league in Serie A, is a good place for him to resurrect his career?
Absolutely. I think that's what it's about for Dele. I think, the story and the journey of which he's been in, and he's been very vocal about that. And I think everybody's really supported him in that. And I don't think there's a single football fan who wouldn't love to see Dele get his career back on track. And not from a perspective of sympathy, a perspective of this is a very good footballer. He has aspirations of getting into that England team. And that can seem far away now and a distant future for us as neutrals and maybe looking at it going, that's going to be difficult. But he should absolutely have those goals. And I'm really, really pleased to see him, under someone like Cesc Fabregas as well, who's finding his way. Yes, they're down the bottom of Serie A trying to stay in the league, but they have big aspirations, big resources. They've been very careful with what they're doing, and a really, really good opportunity for Dele to reignite his career. I'm really pleased to see it. I really hope it works out. Sean Dyche was patient with him as well, trying to build up his fitness. It looks like he's managed to get to a stage where he's done that now, and let's hope he goes and kicks on and reignites his career.
Kevin, what do you reckon? Como, good fit?
Yeah, it's pretty low risk for everyone, I think, in the sense that they've got that financial backing. So they can afford to give him that contract, see how he does. It's a club that's on the up. They are ambitious, but they're at that stage now where he can absolutely help them because they want to establish themselves in Serie A. They've got some good players, very experienced players. Pepe Reina's on the bench at the moment for them. They've got some quality. Patrick Cutrone, who was at Wolves earlier in his career, in Milan as well. So they've got some quality there. I think they'll stay up. And that gives him the opportunity to find some rhythm at a good level. Serie A is a really good league, some real top opponents to come up against. This could be the making of him, but Cesc Fabregas can, if he needs to, take him out of the firing line for a bit, give him the odd game off. So, yeah, I think this works for everyone.
Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Flex, Kwaku, Molly, Rodri, thank you very much. Sterling work, bit of continental flair coming in every Monday. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with Good Morning Transfers. Coming up next, though, it is Sports Desk. Some news from the world of boxing. Stay tuned.